I think to be able to make something inanimate look like it's alive is really hard to do. I'm hoping that when people see my work, they're inspired to do something with their life. If it's, whether it's creative or whatever it is, that's what art's all about, is to try to build people up and inspire them. My name is John Lopez. I'm from Lemon, South Dakota, and I create sculptures out of found objects. Well, I started sculpting about 20 years ago, and I was doing clay work, and then I would take those clay pieces and cast them into bronze. And so then about 10 years ago, I transitioned into fabricating out of scrap metal, and that's when my career really took off. My Aunt Effie passed away in a car accident, and so I moved down to her husband's ranch and helped build a cemetery made out of scrap metal. And I did an angel for the top of this gate, just made out of stuff that my uncle had lying around, and he had a wire feed welder. And so I fashioned this angel together, and after that I thought, this came together so cool, I'm going to try and do a horse. So I did this horse, and it was just like my career went in a whole new direction. But the previous years of studying animal anatomy and whatnot in clay, I think really gave me an advantage to where it helped me figure out how an animal should move or look. And instead of making them out of clay, I'm making them out of scrap metal. So I've done anything from a T-Rex to a tiger to a grizzly bear, and so pretty much animals are my strong suit. And any kind of an animal that someone will commission me to do is a challenge to see if I can do it justice. Well, I grew up on a ranch, and I've been around animals my whole life. So I've, used to halter break colts and break horses, and gotten ran over by a few animals. And so you really start to read their body language, different things that their eyes are doing, or their ears, or the way their head is tilted or whatever. And so I think being able to read an animal really helps me put that into the sculpture. So I think growing up around animals has really given me an advantage. I think it really speaks to the area that the pieces, the scrap metal comes from, and just the era of the Depression. What a lot of people around here survived, well, probably 75 years ago, people survived the Depression here. And so a lot of these old timers around here kind of collect scrap metal because it's got a value to it, and you just throw it in the pile behind the barn and you forget about it, and then they die and then the young generation gets it. So then they come to me and say, hey, do you want to use the scrap metal? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. So there's an ample amount of scrap metal in this area to choose from. I will use things from the size of a washer all the way up to, yeah, a tank, some kind of a round barrel or a tank or whatever. Usually they're medium-sized pieces that I use, like a plow disc or a scoop shovel. So that's kind of the biggest that I will use. And then I just go smaller from there. This workshop was an old horse barn, and I turned it into my welding shop. So part of it is still where my animals are, and then the other part is where I create my work. So I can look out the window and see my horses outside, or I can bring one of them in here and take a measurement of one or whatever. So I like really being close to my animals, and I feel very blessed to have a shop that's big enough now to where I can make some bigger pieces. Because the shop I used to have to cut a hole in the door just to get them out. I was doing this T-Rex, and it wasn't going to fit out of the shop, so I had to take part of the building apart just to get it out. Well, the first step, I will sculpt the subject matter in clay. And so I'll do a little maquette, like just a small maquette in clay. And then if the client approves of that concept, then I'll take that to the shop and then I'll build it again, scale it up into a life size. And so I have a maquette to work off of and use as a guideline. Then I start welding a frame together out of stainless steel so that the piece can stand the test of time. And just start in on my process. I kind of let the process take care of itself. I start grabbing pieces that I've collected over the years and start welding them on the piece and just kind of let the piece talk to me and build itself, basically. And put a few pieces on in a day, and then when I come back the next day, if I don't like it, I'll take the piece off and move it or try a different piece and just keep letting each thing, kind of like a domino effect. I put a new piece on it and that will affect the next piece that goes on it. So it kind of takes this a life of its own, actually. The pieces definitely take on a life of their own in the process. I get stuck on almost every piece. There's this time where it just doesn't really wanna, I'm frustrated or it's not really happening. And then if I stick with it long enough, it'll start to build itself. And that's what being an artist is all about, is that euphoria that you feel when the piece really starts to take off and things start to flow and it starts clicking. And so that's what I live for, are those moments. most of the time, it's not like that, but every once in a while, it'll just take off and the sculpture will come to life. So that's a great moment. And it might be just one piece that I found that I didn't know would do it. And I'll weld it on there, and it's like, okay, this is the direction I'm gonna go with this piece now. And trying to find that flow that's the whole, I'm searching for that flow every day. And some days I hit it and some days I don't. So I just have to be patient and wait for it to hit right. These sculptures have so many different layers. The first thing you see is, you know, it's a horse. And then you come in and the texture starts to reveal itself and you're like, wait a minute, now this is made out of something that I'm not real sure. And you get a little closer and then you start to recognize some of the other objects, and you can walk around it and spend several hours looking at it and picking out the different pieces. And then imagining all the different uses these tools have had, and how many different lives these tools have had. And so that's what art is all about, is revealing this story. And there's a lot of stories. Well, I do a lot of pieces that have a historical meaning to this area. So Sitting Bull, Chief Sitting Bull, or Hugh Glass, he was mauled by a grizzly bear in the area, and our city founder, Ed Lemon. So I will do things that are relevant to our history. I get to see the way that people react to the sculptures because I have a gallery here in Lemon, and in the summertime people come to visit the gallery and see the sculptures, and so I get to talk to people from all over the world, and they'll tell me their favorite piece, or you know, they'll ask me how long did it take, or and so you begin to find out the different pieces that mean a lot to people, and the Tree of Life is one of those that really speaks to people, just because this tree has an old trunk, and it's twisting and it's turning, and it looks old, but then you've got these beautiful pink blossoms that are blooming, and who doesn't love a cherry tree blossoming in the spring? I try to do pieces that have contrasts in them, just like that tree does. You've got the ugly trunk, which you could describe as ugly because it's old and twisted, and then you've got the beauty of the blossoms. I really try to tell a story with my pieces, and in those layers of all the different pieces, there's also a concept or a story that's being told, and a lot of people will figure the story out, and some people will want me to tell them what the story is, and then the piece has a whole new meaning to them. If I was in Italy, I would be making sculptures out of Italian marble. And in South Dakota, there's lots of scrap metal that's just lying around, and it's rusting away, or people are burying it or selling it. And so for me to be able to repurpose it and give it a new life makes me feel good about the work that I'm doing. Also adds such an extra meaning to the piece, because the people that use these discarded pieces, they had a life before they were thrown away, and now they have a second life after I've discovered them, you know, a second time.